I think when a writer attempts something like this, it's either the most difficult job in the world or it's the easiest job in the world. It can never be in the middle. And it will be the most difficult job if a writer has the arrogance of thinking that I am the creator, I am the genius, I will decide where the story goes. It's the easiest job in the world if the writer realizes the actual truth, which is that he or she is only a channel. The story is coming from up above. I genuinely believe that my stories come from Lord Shiva. I know some people may find it strange. I don't care. This is the actual truth, and I've said it from when my first book was released. Because if I did have those creative skills, I would have shown some signs of it when I was in school or college. I didn't know fiction before, Immortals of Melua, nothing in school and college. Most of my school and college friends, in fact, I met someone from Lawrence School, most of my school and college friends who meet me, most of them ask, tell us the truth, who's actually written the books? Because I had shown no creativity when I was young. So I genuinely believe it's the blessings of Lord Shiva. And in terms of writing a different interpretation, this has been a rich tradition in India. Even the Mahabharata, for example, you have Bhima out here, of course, Empty Vasudeva Nair Sahib, an Indian treasure. But even in our ancient era, yes, please, applause for, one of the mistakes we make in India is we don't translate enough. So what is a classic which every Malayali will know, people outside Kerala haven't heard of it. And even I just happened to pick up the book because I was at a Kochi airport. And I saw Bhima and this sounds interesting. And to my dismay, I had studied in Tamil Nadu, but I'd never heard of this. And I loved it. And I started reading more books of Nair Sahib. But there were many other, there are classics in Marathi, like Shivaji Savant's Mrityunjay, which should be translated into Malayalam. There are, classics from Tamil which should be translated into Hindi. We need to cross-pollinate. But sorry, that I digress. The point is that interpretations of our tradition, of Rama and Mahabharata, these stories, they go back to the ancient past. So Kalidasa had interpreted the birth of Lord Karthik very differently in the Kumar Sambhava. Bhasa, who was a great Sanskrit playwright, the greatest perhaps ever, he'd written a version of the Mahabharata called the Pancharatra, where the war didn't happen at all, right? But he did that to explore some philosophy. So this has been a rich tradition in India of different interpretations.
Yeah, we also have the Tulsidas Ramayana, we have the Kamba Ramayanam, then we have the Edutachin Ramayanam.
Absolutely.
So
the Kamba Ramayan from Tamil was actually the first of the devotional Ramayans. The Valmiki ji's Ramayan, remember Lord Ram sees himself as a human being in the Valmiki Ramayan. Because remember, Ravan had asked for a boon that he cannot be killed by the gods, he cannot be killed by Asuras, etc., Gandharvas. He only didn't include human beings because he said, how can a human being kill me? So Lord Vishnu had to be born as a human being. So the Valmiki Ramayana, the Kamba Ramayana was the first of the devotional Ramayans where he was clearly God, right? It's a different interpretation.
Yes, so but when you write about the Ramayana for a new generation of writers who may or may not have learned about the Ramayana from their elders or from writers, do you think that when you fictionalize them or you add your own narrative to it, that it might change the perspective of the Ramayana or the Shiva stories in your trilogy?
My books aren't that good. No. People will remember the originals. We have to...
Or perhaps egg them to read the originals?
Yeah, hopefully. Look, like I said earlier, we are the only pre-Bronze Age culture that is still alive. And I think it was Vaclav Mahler, if I remember correctly, who said this beautiful line, I'm paraphrasing, that traditions is not about the glorification of ashes, it's a preservation of fire. That's what traditions is actually. And what is fire? It has to be kept alive. Our ancestors, they lit the flame of our civilization millennia ago. And they are the only ones who kept the flame of our civilization alive. Every other culture, sometime or the other, their ancestors surrendered. We suffered invasions too. right? Terrible invasions. And our ancestors, our history is taught to us wrong, that our ancestors were cowardly and we lost battles. No, our ancestors were the biggest, toughest, bravest, buggers around, man. There was no one like them because everyone else surrendered. Zoroastrian Persia surrendered. Gilgamesh, Mesopotamia, they surrendered. Coptic Egypt surrendered. The Celts surrendered. Thor, you all heard of Thor? Yeah, in the Avengers series? Yeah, at least the kids would have.
Yeah,
Thor
yeah.
from Avengers. Do you know he was actually a Scandinavian god? Thor? Do the Scandinavians worship Thor anymore? No. The pagan Scandinavians surrendered. The only ones who did not surrender, who kept fighting and fighting and fighting and fighting were our ancestors.
Having
They kept
said
the
that-
flame alive. So our responsibility is to keep that flame alive and pass it on to the next generation.
True, it is true that that is true. But then, were you afraid of tackling something like the Ramayana or the Shiva stories? Because you remember Aubrey Menon was one of the first writers to talk about the Ramayana in a modern sense, and that book is banned in India. So we are walking on very tricky ground where people are very sensitive to any kind of work to do with whom we perceive as gods, and Ram is worshipped as the gods. So were you worried about that, whether your book would become controversial? It became a bestseller, I know, but when you started, were you worried about the aftermath of how your book would be received and whether it would be banned or something like that?
Look, I can give a theoretical answer or I can give a real answer.
Real one, please.
I've been writing books and releasing books for 14 years now. My books have sold 7 million, at least legally, 7 million copies, pirated copies, a lot more. It's not really a secret. You can Google me. You Google me right now. You will not find any controversy on me. I've been doing it for 14 years, man.
Yeah, that's why
There's
I said,
no
when
controversy.
you started
So
the memoir.
my interpretation is often, I know there are writers and I know there are media guys here, don't take this the wrong way. Often artists themselves create controversy for publicity. It's sad, we all know it happens, right? If you yourself don't create controversy, it doesn't happen. Second thing, I think most Indians, even if they hear a different interpretation, if you can just instinctively tell that the interpretation has been done with respect. And if you do that, then there's no controversy, okay? One example is my book. Let me give another example from a movie, which is much more mass. Imagine if you went to Bollywood, to the Hindi film industry in Mumbai. And I have friends in there, many of them are very nice people, but it must be admitted, many of them, especially the younger ones, are not really rooted. Now it's become fashionable, so they go to temples. But you can make out, with the left hand they're doing Rudrabhishekam. You can make out they've never done it in their life. They're just doing it for some Instagram photos. They're not really rooted, okay? Imagine if you go to a Bollywood film producer and you tell him, shoot a scene where the main hero of the movie breaks the base of a shivling and then carries the shivling on his shoulder and then goes and places it under a waterfall, okay? That Bollywood producer will tell you, have you gone mad? My house will burn down. But in the hands of a genuinely devout person like Rajamouli ji, when you see pictures of him, you can make out he's not pretending, he's done it all his life. He's actually a devout person. In the hands of a filmmaker like Rajamouli ji, this is one of the most iconic scenes in Indian cinema from Bahubali, right? So it's not about the scene itself, it's how you make it. And Indians can instinctively see that this has been made with respect, then there's no controversy.
Yes, but since we live
And
in...
the credit for that needs to go to Indians, actually. So you should applaud for yourself. We are willing to listen to a different point of view as long as it is done with respect, which is fair, yeah. Look, even if someone writes something about my faith, about Lord Shiva or Lord Ram, I wouldn't mind it if it was a different interpretation. My only request would be do it with respect. That's all. That's all.